Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2Have 2Role podcast. My name is Oliver. Today, Robin and I sat down and talked with AlessaVamp, also known as Satan online. Satan is a artist and content creator showing off her art on TikTok and on Twitch.tv. She's also a avid TTRPG player. She's part of several TTRPG streams over on Twitch.tv as a player and also as a dungeon mistress on Nexus Adventures on the Hype Goblins channel. She's a good friend of ours, and it was lovely to sit down and speak to her. So, without any further ado, we bring you AlessaVamp. Tell us how you, because we met you during D&D. I'm not even entirely sure when it was. I think was
It
you and
was
Robin in a game? Like,
we met
Yeah.
through Emma, I believe. Um
is that during like pandemic
that was
times,
like
or
pandemic
maybe
time
just
because I
before?
I think it was pandemic times. And I met Robin through a game. And you had just gone into like the TTRPG community, didn't you?
Yeah.
It was just starting because this was before any of your other shows and stuff. And then we kind of just really got close with Sarah as well. We kind of stay a little group, but obviously now we're a little bit more separate because everyone has their own thing going on, which I think it's amazing seeing everyone grow
yeah,
so
that's
much.
what seems to be happening, right? So you were, how long have you been streaming D&D then? Because you're the games master for Nexus Adventures on the Hype Goblins channel, Sarah's channel.
I am. I've been streaming D&D. I officially got into D&D in like 2018, and I was part of a stream, which I still am part of. It's called Plot Hunters. Um, and then we all kind of were like, well, we want a game where it's just us, but we don't have anybody else to run it. And eventually I was just like, you know what? I'll run it. Fuck it. You
Yeah.
know? I'm hoping I can swear here.
Yeah, you can swear here. Don't
Okay,
worry.
okay. And I started, I was, oh god, looking back on my first episode, because it was not only the first game I was running, it was the first game, and it was homebrew because I was like, I don't know D&D lore. I'm gonna be honest, everything I've learned about D&D has been through osmosis. I have not read a single book.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are like that, to be fair, right?
Yeah, and I started it and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing at all. So like the first like few sessions, it isn't until like honestly into like the 80s and 90s I feel that I got really good at DMing because it takes a lot of practice, not only setting up everything, but like being ready that for when everything you set up goes wrong and like they don't go through anything you set up. So I started just preparing just small bits of information and what they would do in general, and then I could just switch them around.
Yeah.
But I think that started in like 2019 if I'm not mistaken. Because that was pretty close to when I started like really getting to TTRPG, so it was pretty close to that.
So did you just jump straight into streaming as well as playing offline, or was it a case of just like, oh, we're playing online and now we're streaming?
I originally started playing online because I didn't have a group that was easy for me to meet in real life. I did play a few times IRL in real life before 2018, but it gets to the point where like, oh, I can't make it this day, and it kind of fades out. But when I really started playing like a consistent campaign was online, just before, like again, just before the pandemic started, maybe a year or two ago, a year or two before the pandemic started. And so everything really started online for me, and I got to know a lot of different communities. And I just stayed online because I met friends, and through those friends I met other friends, and we all lived in different parts. So it was just easier to do everything online, and then from that I just jumped straight into streaming. um and my first stream game was people I did not know. I was
People
on
unknown,
Wow.
yeah.
this was I was It was on Tumblr.
Okay, right.
I followed a Tumblr page that was dedicated to posting just TTRPG content,
Uh-huh.
and so they reposted someone's like a little, like, I guess, ad post that was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I'm making a um TTRPG group for streaming. It's gonna be like all POCs, all women and stuff like that. Which
Uh-huh.
it's no longer women, like, cause we have transgender people in the group, so it's just all POC
Mm-hmm.
currently. And I was like, you know what? The worst thing they can say is like, "Oh, we're full." So I'm like, you
Yeah.
know what? Let me just go ahead and do it. Let me just do it. And surprisingly, they were like, "Oh yeah, no, we need to fill out one more seat." And I was like, "Oh, perfect." And then I got into a Facebook group for it, and then we started talking. And mind you, I haven't used Facebook in years, so this was like like early 2018,
Yeah. Yeah.
or late 2017. And from that, I started streaming, and through that I made other connections and got into other groups, and it was just that's where it started, and that's where I've kept
Yeah,
going.
that's a good thing about online, isn't it? It opens up all these avenues, you know, like playing
Mhm.
in real life is great. There's pros and cons. Like I've spoken to so many
Mhm.
people. Some people like just they can't stand the idea of playing in person. Other people are like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I could do online. That's not really my thing. But especially if you go to streaming, people seem to you tend to just be able to move on to streaming so much easier because most people who play often online already
Mhm.
have a setup, so they're just like, "Yo,
Yeah.
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 I'm ready to go. Let's do it." You know?
And it's so much easier, because they're like, "Oh, well, if this doesn't work, we can do this other day or anything." Like, if
Yeah.
it's not streaming, I'm gonna be honest, most of my online friends that I've met through streaming, the closest I would say is either Sarah, which she lives in Michigan,
Yeah.
or
Wow.
a friend that lives in Texas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, those are the closest people I have
And
to
you're in
me, and
Florida, right? Yeah. So
I'm in
that's
Florida, yeah.
yeah.
So
That's distance.
you were in Scotland when I first met you, and now
Yeah.
you're in
In
England,
England,
and
yeah.
I'm still friends with Jen and Emma in Scotland. So it's crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
But you know, if you didn't have that, we wouldn't meet these people. And we wouldn't meet friends like
yeah.
you know, and we'd get to play with them. Like I said, even though we have kind of separated off a little bit and started
Mm-hmm.
doing our own thing, but which is good though, right?
Yeah, no, I love seeing people grow in this
Yeah,
community. Because when I first met Sarah, which obviously you guys all know personally as well, she had just started getting into the community, and look at her now. She's got her own stream. She's doing this full time. She's doing the charity stream, which is Nexus, and everything in her stream is charity. Then she's doing other games. She's doing TikTok. She's doing YouTube, and she's come such a long way. And not only her, but you guys, like, again, I said we all kind of met when we were just starting this, and then you guys just kind
Yeah.
of took off with it, had your own channel, and
yeah. It's
this podcast. It's just amazing,
yeah,
really.
it's weird because I don't know what because I think a lot of people put it down to like the pandemic, the whole kind of the new little explosion into
Mm-hmm.
D&D. But really, like it sounds like you were the same as us because we got into it like yeah 2018 was when we
Mm-hmm.
started like
Yeah.
playing. I think
Mm-hmm.
probably things like Critical Role and things like that probably
Yeah.
sparked a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think the pandemic just injected a load of enthusiasm into everyone because there was nothing else to do apart from sit and play
Exactly.
games, I guess. But yeah, it's weird how well I played for a very short amount of time. I played a little tiny bit of third edition, but then I had a massive gap, and then fifth edition was
Mm-hmm.
my
Oh, same.
my comeback. Yeah. So yeah, I was gonna ask, is it just been fifth edition that got you into it, or were you interested in other TTRPGs as well as?
So I started with D&D. The first time I played was back in, I think it was 2016. like I knew about D&D, like I knew of it. I wasn't really
Yeah.
into it, but I knew of it because I still as a younger adult and as a teenager, I was still very much into the fantasy genre.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I came to Florida, because I came to Florida in 2014 from Puerto Rico, um, that I got exposed to more of like this community. And it was one random day in I think 2016, don't quote me on that, but around 2016, where I was living with some roommates, and one of them was like, "Oh, we're having some friends over, and they want to run like a D&D game."
Nice.
And looking back at it, it was like, what's the beginner D&D module that they have?
Oh, so yeah, back then it'd be like Lost Mine or Fandelver or
Yeah,
something.
Lost My
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
I
That
forgot
one,
I
yeah.
forget. Yeah, that one, whatever. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't know anything. They were like, "Oh, here's some spells. Here's a pre-made character. This is
Oh
how
yeah.
you play."
Yeah.
And from that day, I got really hooked on. And mind you, I didn't play again till like way later. And I didn't play again until like I moved 2 times after that. Um and then we got into like a more homebrew setting, a more homebrew campaign with me and some friends, and that was in person. But then again, we got really busy because like the DM, he is a chef, so chef life is very fucking crazy
Yeah.
here in
Hectic.
the States and everywhere. It's hectic, so eventually kind of died off. But from that, I got introduced to like Critical Role. Critical Role was really my big introduction to like
Yeah.
mainstream D&D,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
with a lot of people.
Yeah, no, it's the same. Yeah, I basically learned because I watched Critical Role for
Yeah.
several months before we played fifth edition, so I pretty much came in knowing how fifth
Mhm.
edition worked because I was just watching that.
Yeah. And so when I originally got introduced, I think it was fourth edition that I got introduced to.
Yeah.
Or what I read up, because I looked up online, like, free PDFs of the rule books. I think I looked up third and fourth. I had got third and fourth edition, so I kind of looked through that a little bit. But then when I really started playing in 2018, then I got really introduced to fifth edition along with Critical Role, and those are the rules that I really knew. So I was introduced with some earlier editions, but I didn't really like fully play until like fifth edition got introduced to me in 2018, 2017.
Yeah. Well, I think because what fifth edition came out in like 2014, so I think
Yeah.
2016, 17, there was still a lot of groups that were still hanging on to
Mm-hmm.
fourth edition.
Yeah.
But because what I understand, I think Pathfinder was a little bit more similar to what fifth edition is now. So
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of Pathfinder people went on to fifth edition. There was a lot of D&D groups because I think Robin, your first experience in D&D was in fourth edition, wasn't it? With like
Yeah, that would have been in like 2015. And
right,
yeah,
okay.
it was fourth edition that they were all playing at the time. So yeah.
Yeah.
It's that transition period where people are like, well, no, I like the old edition still better. And like they're getting used to the new edition, and now everything's fifth edition.
Yeah.
So, and then now
It's great.
D&D, what? Yeah. Oh, fifth edition is great. I really love it. But what's coming out now, like D&D 1 or something like that?
One D&D. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
D&D.
Yeah, it seems to be. I don't know how far they're going to take us. I just assumed they were going to just kind of just revamp, like fifth edition a little bit, but it looks like they are coming. It's from what I can see from the Unearthed Arcana, it's going to be a brand new rule set basically.
Yeah.
So, but very close to fifth edition. It's basically fifth edition. They've just
like revamping it.
Yeah, cleaned up a few bits and just improved the bits that needed it, I think.
Yeah, putting the spotlight on certain things.
Yeah, that's what they've been doing with fifth edition anyway, with the like new modules or new rule books that they're adding to it, or they're redoing the lore.
Yeah.
So I think at this point they were like, let's just make a whole new edition of it, So it was easier than keep adding on to fifth edition.
I love fifth edition. If it's close to fifth edition, that's good. Because the great thing about fifth edition is that I'm not a game designer, but I'm always like, as a fifth edition GM, I feel like I could literally just make up a world of like, let's play in the Stargate world, or let's play in the Sailor Moon universe, and I could just take fifth edition rules and make a game out of it.
Oh, for sure. Even now there's another TTRPG that got introduced, which is the Mass Effect TTRPG, but that just uses fifth
Yeah,
edition
fifth
rules.
edition.
It's the same. It's the same thing. Just they changed the wording in the world.
Yeah.
So there's so many games that I play that are basically fifth edition, but just a different game.
Yeah.
Which it makes it easy because it's translatable. Obviously, there's easier games to translate and systems to translate, but I think D&D is obviously the popular one.
Yeah, because fifth edition usually it's very much like the players are the overpowered ones, because you played in my Lord of the Rings, stuff, and that's one. It's a very good game. Like it's a fifth edition version of Middle Earth, but then the thing with that system is that, because I think you were a healer, right? And that was the thing. It was like there's no
oh yeah
there's no healing I can do as a
there's
healer.
no ranged healing. There's no magical healing. So it's just like you have
just
to
gonna run into battle real quick.
I'm just gonna run in, do this, and so sometimes, but it's pretty damn close to being great, and it's not really their rule set. It's D&D's rule set. So that's what I love about it. So with Nexus Adventures, because I know you're the DM. Were you the one that was like, I want to run this, or did you just happen to be like draw the short straw and say oh, I'll run it?
We were, like I said, we were all kind of like, oh, we really would like a game where it's this type of game. It's like, oh yeah, we don't have anyone to run it, and I was like, kind of like waiting to see if somebody else volunteer, but eventually nobody did. So I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll give it a shot. Which is why I'm like, I still remember Robin messaged me like, oh, me and Oliver are listening to the podcast of the first of Nexus. We're starting Nexus, and I was like, oh god, please don't. Please don't listen to those first episodes. They're really bad.
We should have had
a long trip or something.
Yeah, we were on like a long trip, and I was like, I'm just gonna put Nexus on, and you were like, oh god, no, don't do that. No. And I was like, oh, but don't we start from the beginning? And I think you were like, no, start from like episode like 30 something. And
I was like, what? Yeah, I was like, oh god, what are they gonna think? And it was like, I was so self-conscious at that time. I'm still very self-conscious of this first few episodes, but as a DM you grow, and I've been with Nexus for about 3 years now. So clearly from the beginning, where I didn't know anything, I didn't really know how to run a game properly, to now where I'm currently running multiple games and playing in multiple games, you can definitely see the difference. So I do suggest people start Nexus on like episode maybe 50 or more.
Oh dear. No, I do love your DM style in Nexus, because I don't get to catch it as much as I used to. But you never seem, I don't know if you are ever flustered, but you never seem flustered by anything they do. Like, you certainly don't give it away if you are. And I always think, wow, she's just got a plan for everything.
Oh god, I do not. I'm gonna tell you my secret. I went from being a very, very lazy DM where I would just come up with like, this is gonna happen, and whatever happens in between then happens. And I'll have a bunch of cheat sheets and stuff. By the way, the Lazy DM's book, or I think it's the Lazy DM's guide book. It's so good. It's so good. I'll put that out there. But then I started learning more about what to plan out, because I think this year for me, I feel the difference of my DM style. I definitely feel more prepared because I've had more experience DMing other groups as well, and some that are off stream, which is a little less, it has a little bit less pressure. But I've just really learned how to yes and really well. And if they didn't go to this place where they had this specific information, I'm just gonna take it and move it around to a different place that they're going to. It's just, I know there's DMs that over prepped or like prep. That's coffee, not for you. Sorry. The cat was trying to get into my coffee. I'm like, please don't.
See him zoom around.
Yeah, that's the last thing he needs, caffeine. But what was I saying? I'm so sorry. There's DMs that over prepped and some that are like lazy DMs, and I kind of found my in between,
Yeah.
which is just prepping. When I prep a story in general, a campaign, now I'm better at like, this is the overall story. With Nexus, I really didn't have like, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the overall story is gonna be.
Yeah, I was
I've
going to
just
ask you
kind
that.
of
Like, did you have a 3-year plan for this? Did you be...
I did not. I did not have I was just like, fuck it, I'll start something and whatever happens, happens. Clearly over the years I have created a story with what's happening in the game currently, and I do have a plan set out. But with other games that I've started later on after Nexus, I now have, this is the beginning point, this is the hook, this is kind of like the middle point, and then this is the end point.
Yeah.
And between then, I'm gonna have loose points that can be moved around
Yes.
that will lead them through the story. But it's important to give the players enough space to do what they want and go where they want without it feeling too railroady. Because I've heard this from a lot of players just in the TTRPG community, that when they've had bad experiences, some of those come from like the DM just being, well, no, you can't do that. This is my story. This is how I want it. So this is like D&D games or any TTRPG games, they're not novels. If you want to control what the players do and have them do it in a specific way, write a book.
Yeah, right.
Don't
that's
don't have
I've always said
don't
that.
have a
Yeah.
a team, a community game.
It's team world building, isn't it? That's what you're doing. People definitely get to they get married to their idea, and I've definitely done it, where you've written down the adventure and you're like, oh, this is going to be so epic when this happens, and when the villain does this to them, and then they're going to do this, and then I'm going to reveal this, and they don't do that, and it's so difficult not to push them into it, or not to go like, oh my god, what do I do now? And that's the problem with over prepping, isn't it? Because you over prep and then they veer so far away from all that prep you've done that just causes you to panic. Whereas, like you said, if you just have 2 points, in fact, I think because you mentioned the Lazy DM's guy, the Sly Flourish, who does that. I think I got this from him actually. He said like it's just like horizon to horizon. So as long as I can see what they're sort of going ahead of them, and at the end of the session they can kind of see a little bit what's ahead of them. Anything in between is like,
you just have to be a few steps ahead of the players, really. Like, have the overall, like, the outline.
Yeah.
But then after that, you just kind of gotta let them do their own shit. Because that's really the beauty of the game, isn't it? Of any TTRPG game. It's just creating a story with your players that can really go any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And it's within creating this world with your players. Because I will have a lot of times, not only with Nexus, I think is my biggest like collaborative world building game, because from the beginning I said, okay, where are you from? Like, create a place and I'll put it in the game. Where's this happening? Where's that happening? Like, and that, like, that world, that next world has really been built by the players. And it's really it's amazing. Now I have like I have some other games that are set in what I made like a different part of that same world. But I made that the kind of bare bones myself. And then, but I've also let the players inspire what is going on there.
Yeah.
And
also, they're less likely to either resent your world or want to burn it down if they feel like, if you go, right, okay, we're in the world and you've made a wizard. Okay, where are you from? Oh, I'm from this wizarding school that's on an island. You're like, cool, and you plonk that wizarding school in your world. They're less likely, when you mention the wizarding world, the wizarding tower or whatever it is, the school, they're less likely to be like, no, I'm not interested in that, because you mentioned it, you put it there, they came up with it, so they're obviously going to want to go there.
Gives them some sort of love for the world that you're creating together.
And I think that's what I really like, because I know a lot of people have their murder hobo parties where it's just they go in and destroy and they do whatever they want. But I really, as a DM, I love story driven games. I love a good fight, don't get me wrong, but with those big fights, I always want them to have some sort of impact on the story and on the players, not just we're fighting a big bad just to fight a big bad, just to get XP, which is usually why I do milestone level ups and XP. But it's so interesting creating a world where they have stakes, you know, they create these connections and they're not just keen on like destroying everything. And I love being like, okay, there's this place, you see the bartender, what does the bartender look like, who are they, what are their names? And I let the players kind of like keep making characters that, you know, they all kind of collaborate. They're like, oh, what if their name is this, what if their race is that, what if they look like this, you know? And that gives them like more stakes in the world, in the game, and lets them know like, hey, this is what we're fighting for, this is what we're protecting, this community that we built and our characters are part of. So it kind of just adds to it, and I just love it. I am a very RP heavy DM, and that's always my favorite part.
I think that's probably what kind of gravitated all of us together when we played a lot together, is that we just found ourselves at tables that were just heavy role play, you know, and that's kind of what that's kind of what we wanted. And I think obviously when we came to the table where you were a player, it was just like everyone was just, it was just full on full sessions of just role play, you know. In fact, I think there was a time where it was like months had gone by and we were just,
it's just role play,
and we were just talking in a bar.
We hadn't left the booth.
We were like, right, we need to do this plan, and then we forget the plan by the end of the session, and then the next week we'd be like, right, anyway, the plan, and then it just went on. And
it's really good. And it's kind of like, instead of like having like constant battles broken up by RP, I have constant RP broken up by little battles and like big battles, because like, again, I will put in little battles just so the players feel like they're using their characters and their abilities to the most. But and then the big battles, like I said again, I want them to have an impact in the story. Again, not fighting a big bad just to fight a big bad. And throughout the years, I've been collecting little advice and like tips and tricks from other DMs, like online, on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, stuff like that. And I think it's just made for such a better game overall, because the players are involved. They're excited to come back to the world. And we're also playing with people like, you know, like us. Like yesterday we did a one shot. We didn't know some people. I think you didn't know who you were bringing, Robin and Oliver, until like that same day. And Sarah just asked us a few questions, and we're like, okay, fine. This is how we're gonna be. And then we instantly piggyback off that, and our characters knew each other, and they were friends, and they had a connection, and they had a dynamic. And it's just so fun playing with people like that, you know, that are just ready to go into the RP, ready to make this a fun, not like, okay, well then we're gonna go here, then I'm gonna loot this, and then like just saying what you're doing in a sense, which, you know, if people like to play that way, there is no shame in that, you know, have your fun. But obviously this is how we like to play, so it's just really fun.
Well, that's the thing, but then also it's like, so what's your experience then with DMing for other groups? Have you had a group that hasn't been so keen to role play in that type of way, or a specific player that isn't, you know, how have you dealt with that if you have come across it?
Most of the people I DM for are very close friends, or at least we're friends and we know each other from other games, so it's easy to know that we have the same style. So I'm running Nexus, and then Sundays I also run a game for Emma and Jenna and Jen and Adam, and then I'm gonna start another one on Friday for a whole different group of friends, which is from Indoor, and RJ's gonna be there and all that. And so these are people I know, people I've played with before. I have run a game with one person before who I didn't really know, and they basically didn't know anything. I don't know if they were just really shy, but they barely said anything and they didn't know what they were doing. So it was just really it was hard, but as a DM, that's kind of your job to kind of like make them feel included still,
Yeah.
and then take what, even if it's just a few words, take what they said and kind of adapt the story into it or adapt them into the story. And I find that descriptions of what they do or how they do something, if they can't say it, if you as a DM do it, that still gets them involved in the story and they still feel part of it.
Yeah.
So I haven't really had someone that complains about the RP, which I feel lucky. But I have played in games where the RP is a little awkward because we
Yeah.
don't really know what we're doing. Or we don't really know each other. I think it was a table that kind of like had rotating players, so it's really interesting.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, that was that. So fortunately, I haven't had a bad experience with a player yet. Any uncomfortable or, again, not bad, but just any issue that occurs,
Yeah.
we end up being able to kind of like talk it out. And
Yeah.
if this table is not your table for you, that's fine. There's no hard feelings. Or if you want something different, we can talk about it and see how we can incorporate that. So
Yeah.
I've been very lucky as a DM, really.
Yeah, everyone's fun's different, isn't it? And it's tough. It's a tough position being a DM when you think about it, because you're not solely responsible for all the fun, but you are supposed to facilitate, or you're supposed to be in charge of the fun.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
it's a lot to put on. Basically, you are another. I know. Especially when we're streaming, or if you're running games in a professional sense, then you're probably expected to be like, right, I've got to take charge of the situation. But most people playing at home, the DM is just another player that's got their books and things like that, and then you're putting on that person, right? You're in charge. You have to be in charge and make sure everyone's having fun. They're not going to be responsible for because everyone's responsible for make sure everyone's having fun. But like, if you're the DM and someone is sitting there quiet, you have to be like, are they not enjoying it, or is that how they play? Are they having fun? Because I've been at tables where they haven't said anything, and you're just like, why are they even showing up? And then in the Discord the next day, they're like, oh, I had such fun. It was great. It was great when this happened. Great this and putting memes in and going, oh, I loved it when this happened between those two guys. You're like, all right, I guess they did have fun. So
yeah, I am in a game where there's a player that does sit back most of the time, and they just genuinely enjoy watching everybody play, but they do have their moments. And when their moments rise, we all cheer them on. We love seeing their moments because they're either really funny or really emotional and stuff like that. But as from the DM point of view, when we have players like that, I think it's good to always do a check-in. Like, hey, are you enjoying it? Is this just how you are? Do you want to be more involved and just don't know how?
Yeah.
If we're in the middle of a game, especially if it's stream, there's not really time to pause. I'll just, I'll go along with the story. But if they're more quiet, be like, okay, what is your character doing? What is your character thinking? Like, what's going on with you? Like, this is situation's happening, but you haven't really said much. So what is the mindset of your character right now? And I let them describe that and what's going on. And it's our job as a DM to go off of that and make them feel included if they're having that hard time just going in and being, extroverted and just putting themselves out there. Because it happens. It happened to me when I was starting. Happens to a lot of people. Happens to mostly everyone, really.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
I've been like just suddenly in a game, and you feel like it should be a comfortable situation, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm nervous. Like, what's your character do? What does your character look like? I'm like, he's a human.
Blood, human.
And he has hair and a sword.
And eyes. He has hair, eyes. There's a weapon in there somewhere.
And I'm like, why am I freaking out? I guess it's just like it must be. It's just that thing that maybe triggers in your head about like being in school and being like, right, stand up, introduce yourself or something like that. Because I don't know what it is about playing a game when
it's that stage fright. Because then the spotlight's on you.
It is. I don't know whether you find it. Saying honestly, like if I'm DMing, I could be like, oh, hello, blah blah blah, and I'll describe literally every NPC. But then when we go around the table, it's just like, right, Ollie, who are you playing? What do they look like?
But no, I forgot. And then it happens like if you go before someone who knows who's really good at describing the character, like, oh shit, I forgot to mention this and how they're dressed. I forgot to mention their hair color, and I forgot this. And you're like, ah, god damn it.
God damn, I didn't realize I'm gonna get an F. Damn.
Yeah, I'm gonna get an F in TTRPG, guys. I failed.
But yeah, I mean, but it is that type of game that, fair enough. People might be enjoying themselves by not wanting to role play so much. But I don't think this is my personal opinion. I don't think there's a table out there that wouldn't be improved by just upping the role play. Because I know there are tables that do zero role play, but this is just my personal opinion. I don't think there's a table out there ever that if they just injected just a little bit, it would make it better. I don't think it's going to make it worse. Anything.
I for sure don't think. I think RP is such a helpful tool in any game because you're here to make a fake fantasy world. To kind of take you out of the real world and you enjoy your time. So RP really just solidifies that. Obviously, bad RP or inappropriate RP can ruin it. Which is why I'm so happy that we have safety tools nowadays and those tools that just can assure us that we're all comfortable with each other and we know how to have fun without making sure that someone doesn't get upset or a line gets crossed or anything. Because I mean that's what the game's all about, just having fun. So really like doing something to I hate using the word trigger because everybody's using it like as an insult now, but that's basically is triggering someone.
Yeah.
What's the fun in that? What's the fun in like abusing someone and abusing their trust in you? Especially as a DM who they're giving you a character, they're giving you part of themselves because we always put a part of ourselves into the characters that we make. There's no way of avoiding that. Because we write about what we know. At least as a starting point. And as a DM, you really have to understand that their players are giving you a part of you. They've taken time to create this person with a full range of emotions and thoughts and ideas and bonds and beliefs, and they're giving you their backstory. So like crossing a line with your players, really, some people do it for the shock factor to get that scary or that's it's fun for you, but that player's going to end up coming back like, oh, you've ruined part of the experience for me. I've heard stories where people are like, I don't feel like I can play that character anymore. And this is a character I've been playing for years. It's just not fun, really. You're just...
cause it's not passive, is it? If you're watching it on a screen and there's a shock factor, you're like, oh, I can't believe that happened at the end. I can't believe Thanos snapped his fingers and he won. But it's not a passive experience being indeed, like you said, you're doing it to someone, and when you see something, obviously when it's in a novel, it's written down, they're totally fictitious, or if you see it in the theater or on television and the cinema, those are actors.
You're a viewer.
You're a viewer, you're passive, they are actors. I've not had any like traditional acting training, but I've spoken to people that have, and that's one thing they say is that like you have to put yourself into uncomfortable positions, like that's why it's emotionally strenuous being an actor. But they are choosing to be like, right, I have to pretend like I am in this distressed situation. They are signing up for that. People coming to play a game aren't signing up for that.
No. No.
And they probably have never been there either. They've never been, especially if you're expecting them to role play and go, okay, your village has just been burnt down, your family's gone. And now I'm pressuring you into this position of like, what are you going to do? A lot of people haven't actually put themselves, especially if they've never done any improv or any amateur acting, that it might be that the bleed might be too much for them,
For sure. And that's happened to me where I thought like a certain line was fine, but when it got to it, I'm like, okay, this is too much. The bleed is too much, so I need to take a step back. Or one where it's just the perfect amount, because like I'm not talking about not having emotional moments, because mind you, I love crying in a game. I love when something in the game makes me cry. Those are my favorite moments. I did a game over at Indoor Adventures channel, which was Realm of the Frost Maiden, and in that last episode of the entire game, I was crying for half of it.
Yeah.
Because my character was basically the only survivor, really. And I was just crying the entire time to the point where like the DM was like, "Oh, what do you do now?" And I'm just crying, like, "Oh, do you need a moment?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm just like, yeah. But it was good. It wasn't. It was a bit unexpected, but we had already established a certain dynamic and lines and veils within the game itself, so we could play safely around with that. But even when it's characters in a book or movie, you have emotions because you feel connected with them.
You do.
Imagine a character that you made, that's even more. So we really need to understand that D&D is a personal experience. Even though we're creating other people in a fake world, a fantasy world, it's us putting all this effort in and, ruining that with such a honestly just a gross betrayal of trust. Because I've heard horror stories of people just say, "Oh, this is the DM asked us to put what we were scared of or our biggest fears," and then they use that in the game.
Yeah.
And not the character's biggest fear, the player's biggest fears.
Oh my! I was about to ask the player. That's that's an abuse of power, really,
That's
isn't it?
That's an abuse of power, yeah. And I'm not here to traumatize people. Like, if you're like, "Here's my backstory, traumatize me," listen, I'll do it. I'll do it, but with your permission. And I will always, as a DM, whenever I know there's something coming up that is going to be emotional, like I'll always check in with the player beforehand, because I'd rather them have something maybe spoiled a bit and then still be comfortable with it than have that shock factor and then not know what's going on with them. Like with Sarah and Nexus Adventures, there was an arc like a few arcs ago where her character got kidnapped again by a horrible person in their backstory. And we had to talk about, I asked her, it's like, what do you want to happen while your character's away? When she's in that state, when she's with this person, what happened? Because I'd rather her tell me what she wants to have been done to her character, like whether she was, in a jail cell, or, she was locked in a room, or she was, put on display at a party or something like that. Not in like a weird sexual way, but just whatever the she wanted, because I didn't want to go over that line because it was already a sensitive topic. And I'm not here to, have a shock factor. I'm here to make my players feel good and have a good time. And whoever watches and enjoys that is welcome to watch the stream. The way I run my tables is not for when I stream my games, it's not for the viewers. It's for my players still. And the viewers are just people who enjoy watching that and enjoy that dynamic that we have. It's just so we have fun. And obviously we put content warnings as well for the viewers, like, hey, this arc has a mention of this, this, and this. So if you don't feel comfortable with it, don't watch it. Because we also have to, if you're streaming, you also have to keep in mind, who's watching. And, the best you can do is just put content warning. And if they decide to watch it and they have a triggered moment, that you already put that content warning, and that's upon them if they watched it or not.
You've done your sort of part there to help them and everything.
You did your due diligence there. But it's such a, I hate having like those dude bros, and not to make a whole generalization, but a lot of them are like the older D&D players. That, I mean, I've seen and heard amazing like older D&D players that are like, "Oh, this is amazing. I'm glad that this is happening. I love this new community." But like a lot of that also translate to the people that are like, "Oh, you're such snowflakes, so I would do this to my players." And I'm like, you shouldn't be a DM. You shouldn't be anywhere near a group of people that are enjoying this situation. Like, that's just bad. Like, I hate it.
Well, it definitely got kind of memed, and I remember like coming in when 5th edition was around, and there was still all these memes of like, "Oh yeah, beware the smiling DM" and all this, and it was very much a, "Oh yeah, D&D is just it's players versus DMs." which is literally not. I'm pretty sure it's on the first page of the player's handbook. That's not the case.
Yeah, that's not the case. No,
that's literally not the game. It's just because because now we've had this media explosion of. Well, actually, it's funny. We were talking to Sarah about this. Like, we feel like it's growing rapidly. It's because we're actually in the community. Whereas she said something that I agree with. I think it's still early stages because, like you said, most of us were into we were already into gaming, we were already into cosplay, we were into fantasy, and then we've kind of fallen into it. I think there's going to come a time where people are going to come into D&D having like people did with like the Game of Thrones TV show. Like people started watching that had never watched a bit of fantasy in their lives or read, or in fact didn't like fantasy. So I can totally see a time coming where people are going to come into this game not having a clue about what a beholder is, what a dragon is, having no clue on what a fantasy game is, let alone a role-playing game, let alone a tabletop game, and they're going to have to experience that. They don't have this kind of pop culture knowledge from like Stranger Things or something, but they're not going to come in and be like expect to be this is how it is it? They're not going to have any expectations.
Those, honestly, I'm gonna be honest, those are some of my favorite players because I love with a passion introducing people to TTRPG and D&D. I love it so much because you kind of get to relieve through them like that first impression. Like, yeah, they don't know what a beholder is, so what's gonna happen when I describe to them just this giant floating like blob with eyes? They're gonna have that first experience, and it's so fun. But I think what I really find fun about that is giving them a good first experience. Letting them know this is how a D&D game should be.
Yeah.
If you play in a different game and you feel uncomfortable, if you don't like what's going on, and you've discussed it with the DM and they're not doing anything, please leave. Know that that's not how the entire community is.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I've heard people like have first like horrible like D&D games, and I was like, oh no, I'm running a game for you. I'm gonna show you what a D&D game is supposed to be. We're not leaving you with that first like that bad taste in your mouth. No, I'm gonna show you that this is just meant for you to have fun.
I like doing it as well. It also just because I love the game, I love the hobby. But yeah, like it's almost you want to fight it because we've had several bad experiences, like really bad experiences.
Oh yeah.
In like the first game onto like the next game and the next game. And sometimes you're like, oh yeah, is everyone in this community, or is it just how the game is supposed to run? You have one person and it's like their way or the highway, and you just have to put up with that's what you played, and that's how D&D is. Well, that's not the case. So yeah, I like doing it just to be like, no, this is how it can be, and if you don't like the way I do it, you can, there's so many other avenues you can go on now. There's tons of resources for you to go out and find games.
I think it's that understanding, isn't there, that there is a table for everyone, and I think that once you leave one game, it does become a wee bit easier then in the future to just know that, oh, if I'm not having fun, if I'm uncomfortable, can leave that game and join another one. And like you said as well, Satan, I mean, like the use of the safety tools and everything, and the fact that those are now just becoming the new sort of normal within the games is incredible, because it just stops so many things from potentially going wrong.
And it's just I've seen the evolution of it, and to be part of it, because I've had those first few tables where I have felt uncomfortable and things have happened to me. And unfortunately, those were some of my first few experiences. Not the first, luckily, but the first few experiences. And then later on, I got people that said to me, like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. Let me run a game for you. So it's so much fun being able to be that person for someone, to be like, either let me introduce you or let me show you a better way, way that you can have fun. And it's just a good thing to do. Honestly.
It's great opening the world, because we had a good time in our first 5th edition campaign that we had. It was an in-person one, but we were heavily gatekept by our DM. Our DM was constantly, I think I'd said before we'd ever done it online, I'm like, oh, you can play online. There's all, and she was like, oh no, you have to know all the gods, and you have to know everything about the Forgotten Realms, and you have to
I don't know, I don't know all the gods. And let me tell you, I'm running a game heavily based on God. I got a player say like, "Oh, what about this god?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, give me a second." I googled it real quick. There's no way to know everything.
Yeah,
There really isn't.
yeah. So yeah, it's and then what? But if it's me, then I just like to just open the world up. I think for us, probably the three of us, we've probably got the opposite problem now because we've met so many cool people that yeah, there's tons of tables that I would love to be a part of, and there's now tons of players I would love to play with. But you end up being so busy doing other things. You're like, I don't have enough nights in the week to run all the be in all the games or run games that I would like to for people. So but yeah, a lot of people aren't in that position, so spreading it about is good.
Yeah, and I think that the sign that we're having this conversation and we're all agreeing on this, coupled with the fact that you guys are busy putting this out into the world and creating that kind of space, like I said with Sarah and like other friends I have, it's good to know that people with this mindset are the ones that are also taking that step, that are like, here's a podcast, here's a game, here's a stream, here's some tips and advice on a good way to run a fun game. To run an inclusive game. So people with this sort of mindset taking that step to show people that that honestly, plain speaking, abusive and toxic community, like small community of people that you have played with, is not the be all end all. So
no,
it's good to know that I have friends with the same mindset that are putting out content to show people that don't know there's a different way of doing that. There is a different way of doing it.
Also, like, and we're learning as well. I mean, like from when when we first started playing, and then playing during the pandemic, we were playing like every single day. Yeah, and I was, you DM and you play in lots of games, and then it's not so much sometimes that you're in it's toxicity, but yeah, sometimes if you're not being vigilant on your behavior, or if you're not constantly talking to other people, being in different groups, and then you start to spot your own mistakes as well, because I've done it as well. I've been like, oh, I pushed that bit of role play too far, and then it's not until later on you're talking to people, and then you actually give out that advice. But if I say, oh yeah, you need to make sure you have something with your fellow players to be like, are you you okay with this, or have your calibration tools at the end, it's because I've probably have pushed it too far in the past.
Yeah, no, and that happens. I think there's no way of getting like, quote unquote the perfect DM that knows how to run a smooth game with no mistakes whatsoever, because we're all doing the first time at something at some point, and either where it's happening to us or we did the thing. It just depends really how we react to it, because I have made situations where I had a player, they're like, oh, I'm uncomfortable with this. So not only did I, turn the narrative around in the game, I also talked to them after. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry for making you uncomfortable. Can we talk about it so this doesn't happen again in the future? So that's a different reaction than doing like, oh, whatever, fuck you. This is how the game's going. We're not gonna stop in the middle of the game.
Yeah, I'm
so
the
that's
DM.
yeah. And those mistakes happen. They sometimes we cross a line we didn't know that was there, and maybe the player is shy at first and doesn't want to say anything, but eventually you do realize there's something wrong, and then you talk it out, and you correct your mistakes as much as you can, and then you learn. So next time that doesn't happen. We're all new at something. We are always it's always the first time for everyone at some point, like I said. So
especially when you're playing a game where literally anything is possible as well,
exactly.
where you literally cannot predict anything, because it's it's an improvised game as well, isn't it? That's what it is. So you can't mentally prepare yourself for certain things, and that's where you actually learn a lot about yourself. I know I do.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
if these
Oh, for
scenarios
sure.
get thrown at me, I'm like, and then I react in a certain way, and then it's after I was like, oh, I should have said this, I do this, but then I reacted the way I reacted for a reason, you know, and I'm like,
Hmm.
and then you reflect on it after, and it just kind of shows you because you think you might, but if someone says, oh yeah, if a player does this, what would you do? It's very easy to be like, oh yeah, well I would do this, and then I would do this. But that's never usually the case. Usually you find out what you would do
Hmm.
when it's actually thrown at you. You're
Hmm.
like, oh,
Hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
And then afterwards you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I should have done that. And then
Yeah.
sometimes when you talk to the players and they're like, oh no, that was great. Yeah, we didn't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, I think it's also knowing that like all both the DM and the players knowing that there will mistakes will happen and there are things that neither of them can account for. Like
Yeah.
there are situations that you didn't think was a line or a veil or a hard stop until it happens in the game. You're like, oh shit, this is I don't like what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you either X card it or you talk to your DM later. You
Yeah.
know, that's kind of how it happens.
Yeah.
Here I am manhandling my cat like it's a fucking purse.
Wasn't going to say anything.
They're cats. It's fine.
It's
I'm not
fine.
throwing him. Just carrying. He's so tiny.
He
And
loves
now
it.
he's biting my feet.
But yeah, so you're an artist.
I am.
Was a lot of your art inspired by the TTRPGs? Was that did the TTRPGs push you more into that type of art, or were you already into that type of art, and that's what led you to kind of fantasy-esque style gaming and things like this?
So I've always been doing art my entire life ever since I can remember. But I never really had like a fixed way of doing it when I
Mhm.
was younger. And there was a point in time between 2015, 2017 that um you know, big life choices happened. I was in a deep depression and I kind of just stopped doing art for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And when I got that motivation to come back, I was in the TTRPG world already, and I think that really inspired the way I did art and um what kind of art I wanted to make because a lot of the times even now like I started just making like uh character busts,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
was based on that, but even bigger pieces that I have done now are still inspired by characters I've made for games
Yes.
or themes in games that I've played. So I really do think that TTRPGs have really inspired my art very heavily.
Yes.
And I've kind of found my own space within the TTRPG community to make art for that
Yes.
community, whether it's character bust or overlays or logos and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like we met a while ago and I've done overlays and busts and characters and stuff like that for you guys.
Yeah.
And I actually currently I sent it to Robin just before we started, but I'm
I'm
redoing I was in a really bad like art block, like art burnout week this
Uh-huh.
week, and my friend was like, oh, why didn't you take something you drew like years ago and like redraw it?
Yeah.
I'm like,
That's
okay.
that's a good
And
exercise. Yeah.
I'm still working on it, but I found the old bust of Rosalind that I did for the
Oh yeah.
Lord
Yeah.
of the Rings game, and
Yes.
I'll send it to you. It's not done yet, but I sent it to Robin, but I'll send it to you on
Nice.
No,
Discord.
it's looking fantastic, and like seeing the difference and everything as well.
Yeah.
It is just like
And there you can see like, I'm not ashamed of my art before, like, but now I can obviously I've learned things and look, I'm like, okay, I definitely have improved.
Yes.
But it really has been inspired a lot by this community and
Yes.
by other artists in this community and just fantasy artists in general, because I do follow a lot of artists that are not really related to the TTRPG community, but fantasy has always been a big inspiration. So this community really has just brought that out more in my art
Yeah.
and has just inspired me more.
Yeah, I was kind of interested because I kind of saw the progression of your art through, like when because you Twitch stream your art, you have in the past you do your Twitch streams, and I see you doing stuff on TikTok now. But yeah, you will get like, right, we're doing a game. I need to do I want to do art for the characters in the game, and then you go, right, okay, it's not a case of, oh, what do I want to draw? You want to draw the characters, but you're drawing someone else's character. So they're like, oh, it's a tiefling. So you're like, oh, and then before you know it, you're getting better and better at drawing tiefling horns, you know, and then you go, oh, okay, and then you put out, oh, I'm doing commissions, and people go, oh yeah, I see that, you know, Satan's very good at drawing tieflings or whatever, and then you start. So it does. It must. I can tell anyway that it's like it's pushed you into that kind of lane, you know.
Yeah, it really has, and I'm very grateful because while there's no like, oh, I'm into D&D now, I'm gonna make D&D art kind of moment for me. It is just kind of a progression of things, and it's just habit and just being able to draw. Honestly, I feel so happy drawing other people's character and getting their vision like on quote unquote paper. I do digital art, so it's not really paper, but you know, getting that vision out and being like, hey, this is the character you've imagined in your head. That at least this is my rendition of them. Here you go.
Well, you've done one of mine. You've done Felix. So.
Yeah, I did Felix.
Perfect,
That's true, and it's really fun to get to create a character or like draw a character that people have imagined for so long and give them a face and you know, their own style and their own expressions and all that, and it's just fun watching that come to life for other people. I mean, and I love doing it for myself too. Don't get me wrong. I love drawing my characters so much. So it's fun. It's a good exercise if you're an artist to draw your own characters. To kind of see how like how you see them in your mind, so I kind of put it out and kind of start changing things. So it's just really fun. I love creating busts more than anything because I've always been more focused on like facial expressions and hair and all that stuff. So that's kind of like my niche, which I am trying to branch out. I have branched out, which I'm very happy for. But I still always go back to doing character busts because I just really like it. It's just fun.
Yeah,
one of the most recent ones. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, one of the most recent ones that you've done, the one that you did most recently streamed doing is like gorgeous. It's the fact that I was looking at it, it's because it's the hands and everything in it, and I was just
the
like,
black and white one.
Yes, I was like, how? Because those hands, I don't know. It's just absolutely gorgeous the way you've got them almost like glowing and everything. And I hadn't seen any of your stuff in quite a while, and that like popped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is, I did not expect to see it. It's absolutely gorgeous. How long did it take you to do that? Because I think that's one that you were doing for a little while.
It was that one, which by the way, I haven't finished it completely, but I am so proud of that one. That this doesn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but I actually have it as my phone background.
Nice.
That's how you know how proud I am of it. Even though I haven't finished it because that one's been a project, but that happened when something just clicked for me as an artist. I was having a really hard time because I knew like I didn't like my art where it was at the moment. I didn't like how I was looking. I was just entirely unhappy with it at the moment, and I was afraid of getting back into that slump like where I was in those 3 years where I didn't do art. But I was watching and it was on TikTok. There was such a good there's a good art community there, but there's also a very toxic art community there, so you got to be careful. But I do tend to follow obviously those that are of the better community part of the community. But I do, there's a lot of nice people there that do share tips and tricks, and even the smallest thing, it was I don't remember the person that did it. I follow them, but I don't remember their name at the moment. I'll have to find them later. But they were like showing like, oh, this is how I do art. This is how I shade. I have this set of brushes and I shade like this in black and white, and then I do color on top of it. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've known about this entire time. Why haven't I tried this? Because I've always had a really hard time with color. And so I just started doing a lot of black and white, and that helped me focus on just shape and volume, and not think about color and gradients and stuff like that. And it just helped me focus on the base of it and what it was generally going to look like. to the point where I just really enjoyed just the black and white, with just maybe a pop of color. And I'll still do full color stuff like what I just showed you of Rosalind, but I enjoy that painterly style. And it was just that moment that clicked. Like I can have these simple tools because the brushes I use for that, they're brushes I use Clip Studio Paint now. They're default brushes, like default watercolor brushes that I use. I don't use any special brush pack that I bought or anything. And just I don't know, that tutorial makes just something click. Like I knew about it. I knew about the underpainting and then adding color and stuff like that. But that kind of made something click, and I just started kind of putting out all these nice black and white pieces with maybe a pop of color.
Yeah.
And it helped me focus on bone structure, on the face, on the features more, instead of like just an overall look. Because I think a lot of people, this is something that I heard also, and I agree with it now, experiencing that a lot of artists do tend to try and focus on like the overall look without focusing on the technique, which is I think what I was doing. Like when you see the difference between Rosalind then and now, you can kind of see that I was kind of focused like, oh, what's the color going to be? What's the thing going to be? But I wasn't focused on like facial structure and like how things are going to lay together and the volume of things. And now you can kind of see that now that I studied it in just black and white, at least this is how it worked for me. I can like translate that into color, and it's just really fun transition. And it was a moment where it just clicked for me and I could see the difference. Because I think when you create something, whether it's art, whether it's cosplays, whether it's a game, it's really hard for you to see the difference between then and now, because you are being part of that journey. Obviously you are yourself, you are gradually growing and you don't see it. It's like you look at yourself so much every day, you don't notice you losing weight, something like that, or gaining weight. But then you look back, like I just did with this, and I'm like, wow, okay, I see it.
You got to, you
can tell the difference.
Try to, or even, I mean, there's, you know, I'm not an artist at all, but even just like since we started doing this podcast and we started hosting, it's been like you know less than a year, and I went back and listened to like our first episode, and I'm like, woof, I thought we did okay, but yeah, we have.
That's why I didn't want you listening to Nexus first 3 episodes. You understand?
You got it. Yeah, you get the reps in, but it's a good. Even though sometimes it can be cringe, but at the same time, you're like,
that's how you grow.
Wow, yeah, we have been making progress. You know, we're being like that tortoise, you know, chasing that hare, just you know, one step at a time. It doesn't feel like we're going anywhere fast when you're actually in the race. But when you look back and you're like, oh no, I actually have come.
Look at how far I've come, you know.
I've come a long way.
And it's just really cool to be able to see that.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's one great thing about. I think I say this to everybody, but with the D&D hobby or the TTRPG hobby, there's so many. It's like a web of different hobbies like placed on, you know, which it's literally just a game with a few sheets of paper as rules, but you know, you get people that really specialize in one thing and dip their toes into others. Like, you know, like art is a massive part of D&D. Like, can you imagine D&D without art? Like, it just wouldn't be a thing. And then people like, because Robin, you've dipped your toe into creating art. You've created art, and you especially since, because you've always been a bit arty, haven't you, Robin? But like, it's only recently that you've been doing people's original characters.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that's again mainly down to like chatting with you, Satan, because when you and I used to like hang out and just do little crafting hangouts together, and it was all the chat then and all the sort of like tips and tricks that you passed on to me. Then I finally went, okay, I'm going to draw someone. And then I think like the first thing that I did, I think every 2 seconds I was messaging you being like, how do I Photoshop?
But I cherish those moments because I still think back of those moments fondly, and just seeing honestly your progression in that, because like Oliver said, you've always been creative, you've done a lot of cosplay and all that stuff, but translating that into a different creative outlet, seeing you progress. And like I always love being someone to like help teach people, like being like, oh, how do I do this? I'm like, okay, this is how I do it, see if it works for you. Now we can do something else. I love teaching people in that way, and seeing them kind of take up, because a lot of people do do say like, oh, you are such a great artist. I wish I was born with that ability. Because the thing is that no one is born with that. No one's born knowing how to cosplay. No one is born knowing how to be a lawyer.
No.
It's art, like anything else, is something a skill that you learn and that you gain through persistence. Because like, I mean, 3 years I went without doing art. I could have just stopped and not never go back to it, but
Yeah.
I was like, this is such a big part of me. I want to
Yeah.
go back to it, and I felt like I was starting from zero, and I still feel like I should be further along in my artistic skills, but I also have to learn to give myself grace, which is why I tell a lot of people, you are always constantly learning.
Yeah.
So whatever you kind of like beat yourself up over, be kind to yourself, because you wouldn't see somebody else that's also struggling with that same thing and like at insult to injury, you would try to
Yes.
help them, or at least I hope that you would,
Yeah. If you're a decent person.
yeah, if you're a decent person, so you have to really give yourself that grace of learning and knowing that you are worth the time it takes to learn any skill. And that's a saying I got from someone I watch on TikTok called the trans handyman, who teaches people how to do like jobs around their house because they're like a plumber and all that. It's like, you are worth the time it takes to learn a new skill. You're worth the time it takes to learn how to do art, to learn how to cosplay, to learn how to sew, to learn how to write, novels or short stories or books. And you have to, give yourself that time to learn it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to be good at it the first time around. No matter how badly I want to, I will never be good the first time I do something, which, is something I hate. But hey, you gotta take time and practice and give
Yeah.
yourself that time. So
Hey, it's something I say to Robin a lot. Robin's a little bit like that, aren't you? It's something I say. Every time we try something new and Robin gets really frustrated. It doesn't help that we're both very competitive. So usually if it's like a game, I'm like, oh, you'll like play Mortal Kombat, and Robin will be like, why aren't I winning? I'm like, because I've been playing this since I was 6. That's why you're not winning.
and you just picked it up,
I spent a whole 3 minutes on it. I should be good at this now.
I should be good at this now. And that's honestly, it's knowing that, and we'll still have those habits where we're like, oh, why am I not good at this? I just spent a whole 10 minutes doing this. But it's that you have to learn how to laugh at yourself and give yourself time to make those mistakes and learn from them. Yes, if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn, you don't improve. And you just got to practice, and practice doesn't make perfect in my book, but practice does make you better, because we're always constantly getting better.
Yeah, you got to get the reps in. Yeah, you just got to do it. That's the thing as well, isn't it? Sometimes it's you want it to be perfect because you're always comparing yourself to people that are slightly ahead of you, and there's always going to be someone slightly ahead of you, but there's also going to be lots of people, like you said, behind you as well. And yeah, you just got to look to the people. Well, you can learn from people slightly behind you as well, but yeah, you want to look up to the people that are willing to share their advice ahead of you.
For sure, yeah.
And avoid the people below you or behind you, sorry, that want to drag you down, because that's that's
for sure.
Yeah, that's one thing about if it's art, if it's doing a podcast, if it's streaming D&D, that's what you have to come up against, is that you've put yourself out there, and then you get the people that just want to instantly tear you down, so that adds to that fear of getting out and doing it as well.
For sure. And I think it's hard to start new things when you see how good people are.
Yeah.
It can be very, very intimidating, and you can be like, oh, well, if there's someone already that good, why would I even try? But, and, I still constantly have those thoughts as an artist, seeing other people's art and work, but you have to also understand, like, they were at your pace at some point, and instead of taking what they're doing now as like defeat, take it as inspiration. Be like, oh, I want to get to that point, so let me learn from this person, let me learn from their art, let me learn from what they're doing to get to that point. And it is something that you still have to constantly remind yourself, because even right now I currently see people like, hey, I'm 19 years old, I made this whole entire like landscape with a million pieces, galleries worth, and I'm like, ah, shit. But instead of being upset, which I do get upset sometimes, but then I tell myself, first of all, if you're upset, don't share it with that person. That person has nothing to do with you. Don't be that person. Don't be that person that leaves me comments. Be upset, but also learn that people are in different parts of their life, of their careers, and you have to take that, and instead of being upset with yourself or upset with them, take it as inspiration. If that person can do it, so can you. Kind of situation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, without trying to like turn this into like a motivational podcast. Yeah, I do try to, and it's hard. Like you try not to compare yourself to other people. The only person you want to compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
I know that sounds like a cheesy soundbite, but that's what I try and do. I try
For sure.
because like you said, if you keep obviously if you want to get up and go, oh yeah, this person is doing really well in their podcast, or they're doing really well in their YouTube channel. You want to be like, obviously, really, you should be studying them and going, okay, what are they doing right, so I can implement it in me. There's no point in being jealous. So you have to. Yeah, I think that's the one good thing about this creative community and this space coming into this space. Like it forces you to like look at the people that are successful in whatever sphere it is, and just go, instead of going, oh yeah, I wish I had what they just go, well, what are they doing, and also
what are they doing that I'm not,
yeah, what are they doing, and yeah, if you're lucky, then they might be your friends, and you can just message them and ask them and go, hey, how do you get your stream looking like that? How do you get captions on your thing, and how do you, especially when a lot of us are out here on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes you're up against people that are like, I've spoken to like D&D actual streams that they're like, oh yeah, we have like a cameraman, and we have a producer, we have an editor, I'm like, oh okay. We're just here on our
I
own.
have my computer.
Yeah.
I just got it really is kind of just ask, and asking you shall receive most of the time.
Yeah.
Because the way I've set up everything, it's been with the help of people. I mean, the camera I'm using now was a gift from Simon at Indoor Adventures. He was like, hey, I have this extra camera, and I know you've been using like your laptop camera, so do you want it? And I was like, oh, thank you so much, that's amazing. And I've had friends that were like, oh, here, I've had so many good friends that like I just be like, oh, you need this resource, here, let me give it to you.
Yes.
Oh, you need this to learn this, oh, here, let me help you, let me teach you. And just people should know that that is usually the norm, instead of like people being like, oh, fuck you, I don't want to share my secrets. That's more of the exception, that people are just rude. The norm usually is that people are going to be like, oh yeah, let me show you how it's done, let me help you get better.
Yeah, or like I just came across this new algorithm, and try doing this. This is what I've just started doing, and then you share tips and tricks together, and then you all grow together, instead of one person just trying to gatekeep what they found. And I think we've all been quite lucky in the friends and things that we've made within this community, like people like yourself, like Sarah, and so on. We've made so many wonderful friends who are willing to just be like, yeah, look at this cool new thing that I'm doing, or look at this, and you get to actually just grow together.
I think that's really the fun part. Like I said, going back to the beginning, the fun part is seeing everyone around you just grow. Like we knew each other before any of this stuff, before the Hype Goblin, before to having to roll, all that stuff. So it's really fun seeing your community grow, and knowing that you kind of grew together because you were all helping each other out.
Yeah.
I think that's really like the
and then
good
you're all ready
way
for
to view it.
opportunities as well, because when an opportunity comes up, you're just like, oh, I know someone that would definitely be good for that, and you shoot them a message. And that's the thing, when I'm, especially if it's like media, whether it's going to be art or entertainment or audio or whatever, like if I'm interested in, say, like, martial arts, and I'm listening to a martial arts podcast, if they have like a guest on, or if they mention, oh yeah, I really like this person, they said this, I don't have to like choose between, oh, hang on, do I listen to this other person, or do I listen to the people I'm already listening to? No, I can stop listening to them and then go online and look up the person they mentioned, and they're usually friends because they've mentioned them, and then I'll follow both of them. So they've both got a follower, and that I prefer that. That's what's so good about the way the creative community is now online, as opposed to, oh, what channel am I going to watch on the television? Am I going to watch this show or another show, another comedian show? There isn't that anymore. There's no competition like that. So
there really isn't.
Yeah.
And I think in this community, you'll see that when we do find people that are like that, are very gatekeepy, they end up like fading out into, nothing because people realize how awful that really is and how bad that, like, you're not really putting a good name on yourself when you do that in the community.
No.
Because there's no reason to like punch down. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they get found out as well. Like there's been especially recently there's been so much stuff coming out, and it's just it's weird how these people sometimes they hide in this community. But because we have people, that's why you need to kind of keep pushing and keep going. Because like I said, Rob and I had bad experiences, it's especially when we first got into streaming and things like that. And it can make you think, oh yeah, should we give up? But if you keep pushing, then you're going to push that type of crap out, and then you've got a network of good people, nice people around you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like the trash takes itself out eventually,
Yeah. We don't have any strange emails that we haven't disclosed. Don't worry. I'm thinking about just making all my DMs just public all the time.
It's like, oh god,
we're fine. We are good people. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Anyway, so do you want to? Is there anything you want to plug? Anything you want to? Do you want to tell people where they can find you? Any projects you want to mention?
For sure. Yeah. Well, I kind of rebranded recently, so you can find me everywhere: TikTok, Twitter. I think Twitch is the only one that's slightly different, but Instagram at AlessaVamp Art. And I think Twitch is just AlessaVamp. And I do have to start streaming again. It's just this year has been so busy, and now that I have this little baby kitten that I've been taking care of, he's been a handful. I have learned that I have reinforced the thought that I do not want kids ever. I am happy with just this little cat, this little guy. But that's not plugging my stuff in. Sorry.
Hey, kitty cam. Well, let's put a cam on the cat. I don't know if that works as well as the dog cams. I think they're usually a little bit more.
Kitty cam. He just wants to slide back down. But yeah, you can find me at AlessaVamp Art. I'm most active on Twitter, where I will post my art, but I also do retweet a lot of other people's art. I do have a Ko-Fi if you'd like to send a few bucks my way and kind of keep updated with my art. I do post there a lot as well, and TikTok as well. I kind of post every few days there. If you want to keep and see kind of like time lapse of my art, or just funny videos of my art, and my cat as well. And some of the bigger projects that I am part of is I sent it to Rob, and it's Omens Rising. It's a new TTRPG that's coming up that I am eternally grateful to be a part of. I am both a writer and an artist for that project. So if you check them out on Twitter at Omens Rising, it's a very inclusive community. It's a very inclusive group of people who are working on this. And I think it's going to be really interesting for everyone. There's been a few game testing streams already. There's one on Sarah's channel if anyone wants to check it out. I believe it's also on her YouTube. It's a great game, and it's one of those games that's really heavily based on RP, so I think you guys will like it as well.
Nice.
And I think that's it. But anything else I would plug is a charity. I am a big supporter of the Trevor Project because I am part of the, as Sarah puts it, the Alphabet Mafia, the LGBTQ community. And so far, I found that they're some of the most trustworthy charities, and I like to know that my money's going to the people that needs it. So go give them. If you can't donate, get them a view, share it, give them a shout out, do what you can.
Definitely. Well, we've loved having you on. Satan, we need to have you back on again. I don't think like an hour and a half was enough.
I'm more than happy to sit down and chat with you guys. I know it's been a while since we have just us friends, not just for the podcast. So whenever you want me back on, I will be more than happy to come back on and chat and spew my nonsense and my rants.
We can't wait. Right, we'll say goodbye. See you later, Rob.
Bye. Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, make sure that you follow and subscribe so you know when a new episode is posted. You can leave a review, you can share it around, it would really help us out, and we appreciate you doing that. And remember, you can catch us live on twitch.tv/2Have 2Role. That's the number 2 and roll is into roleplay. Thank you very much for listening.